to do something a little different today. We get all kinds of emails from people asking questions. And I was just wondering that if we took some of the emails where the question that they ask would really apply to a lot of people, and we got permission from the person who sent the email, would it be all right to answer that as part of a talk? We floated that idea for a bit and then talked to some of the people that sent emails, and they gave us permission for me to respond to their emails. And so that's what we're going to do, and hopefully it's helpful to a lot of people. I need to say just a couple of things up front, and that is when I started this project and I read through the first couple of emails, I thought, okay, this will be simple. And then the more I thought about it, it was like, yeah, this is not going to be as simple as I thought. Because if I was meeting with a person as a counselor, I would hear their story, but then I would ask all kinds of questions to just make sure I understood it correctly, to explore different things maybe they hadn't talked about but hinted at. And I would really be looking to get an accurate picture of kind of all of the types of trauma in their life, the forces that shape them, the ways they adapted to survive, how those adaptations have affected their adult life, some of their main wounds that are still causing them issues in their life. That would be my goal. But when you get just an email, you don't get all of that information, and you don't have the opportunity to dialogue and explore that information. And so sadly, you end up having to make some assumptions. And I've done this long enough that I think I can make fairly good assumptions, but I might be wrong in some of the areas, and I want to say that up front. The second thing that I need to say is that often when I'm counseling, I go back to kind of highlighting the main issues and the main wounds, and people can be a spectator to that and think I'm judging the person. No, I'm not. I'm just trying to show what that child had to do to survive. There's no judgment. There's no condemnation. I'm not looking down on the person in any way. I admire the child that is surviving. My heart goes out to that child that had to use these different adaptations to survive. So when I get to the kind of the observations about the issues, it's not in any way a judgmental thing. It's just to really understand with empathy what this child had to do to survive. And so my goal is to help a person see that all of these adaptations which let them survive aren't working today, but often have kept them now in a trap where they just keep repeating the same patterns. And so then I want to go to, how do you move forward? How do you get out of that? What needs to change? What are tools to change? What does healthy look like? So let me read you the letter we got from somebody we'll call M. It says, "Dear Tim, thank you for everything you do. I'm a woman in my 20s, and about a year ago I was diagnosed with complex PTSD and ADHD. I've been facing the same painful pattern for years, and I'm ready to understand it and move forward. When I was a teenager, I counted down the days until I turned 18 and could leave home. I did well enough in school without much effort, but my home life was chaotic. I thought everything would get better once I was on my own, but I wasn't prepared for how hard it would be to navigate life without support, how unprepared for life on my own I was. I started university but struggled almost immediately with keeping up academically and managing daily life, so I left. Since then, I've tried several different programs. I'm currently in my 6th attempt, 8 years after finishing high school, and I still don't have a degree. I can't seem to find a sense of direction or purpose. I'm currently off due to burnout and doing EMDR therapy, trying to understand the deeper layers of what's happening. It feels like I was so focused on escaping my childhood that I never had space to imagine who I wanted to become. Each time I chose a path, I squeezed myself into it, convinced it was the perfect solution. I would throw myself in completely, but eventually the pressure became too much. I'd feel drained, ashamed, and confused, and then I would quit. That would spiral into self-criticism and panic, which pushed me to jump into another new path just to feel hopeful again, and the cycle kept repeating. I feel lost and unsure why this keeps happening. Part of me believes it's fear of failure or rejection or a need for validation. Part of me wants to prove I'm not broken. Some days I dream of becoming an artist, but fear and perfectionism stop me. Other days I think I should choose something simple to avoid being overwhelmed, but I worry that might just be another form of running away. I want to understand what's underneath this pattern and how to finally build a life I can trust. Can you help me figure out why I'm getting stuck in this pattern, how I can break free, and how I can move forward in my life? Thank you so much, M. So let me just highlight how M has kind of assessed herself. And to me, she shows a lot of self-awareness. So she said, it feels like I was so focused on escaping my childhood, which was very chaotic, that I never had time to imagine who I wanted to become. Each time I chose a path, I squeezed myself into it and convinced it was the perfect solution. This was going to fix everything and go at it 110%, but the pressure became too much. So they drained, stressed out, ashamed, confused, so they'd quit. But then they would panic and go back into this cycle. So a lot of that got really, really well. Then she said, I feel lost and unsure why this keeps happening. Part of me believes there's fear of failure, fear of rejection, a need for validation, and to prove that I'm not broken, and then not knowing how to move forward. So I think all of those play a role. I think there's a lot of the diagnosis that Emma's done that is quite accurate. But I do think there's other things that need to be understood and looked at. So let me just see if I can kind of play back to M what I have heard and put it in my words, but point out what the issues are. So starts with this young girl that's growing up in chaos, and she can't wait to turn 18 to get out of the house. And so what I suspect was true in that young girl was not just the chaos. I suspect that her needs weren't consistently met. She wasn't able to connect with anybody very well within that chaos. She didn't feel that she really mattered or that she felt seen or understood by any. She didn't feel loved, and so she felt very much alone, very much abandoned. That child probably had a lot of anger, hurt, and frustration, but she had to suppress it. She couldn't express it, and so it was stuffed down. And then to cope, she escaped into a fantasy world, and part of that fantasy world was creating this perfect world where everything was right and where she was loved. Part of growing up in this chaos was she wasn't taught any tools about what a healthy life looks like, how to become successful. None of that was taught or role modeled for her. And then she spent so much time just trying to survive the chaos that she didn't have time to explore who she was, discover what she was good at. She just had to try and survive. And then it seems to me that she was a girl that probably received a lot of criticism when she failed, didn't get much validation or encouragement, if any. And so there's neglect, there's criticism that was just part of her life. And as a result, she just never felt good enough. She always felt less than. And so she became quite critical of herself as well. Then I just see a young girl that had so much stress because she couldn't resolve any of the problems in this chaos. And so the only solution was to escape to fantasy or to escape by running away from home, turning 18 and getting out of this mess. But she gets out of this mess, but doesn't have the tools, doesn't have the right recipe for success or happiness. has got all of these other issues. And so she goes into adult life thinking, I just need to find the right career path, and then that'll fix everything. Then I'll be happy. Then I can get an organized, good life. But she goes into a career path. She doesn't have the tools to handle stress, to do the job well, all kinds of different skills that are needed. And so she goes at it 110%, but she hasn't healed her inner world or matured her inner world. And so she ends up burning out. And that leads to all kinds of confusion, panic, frustration. I think it's important to realize that when she heads into this career world, what her fantasy thinking from childhood does is go, oh, this will work out perfectly. And so there's a hope that's attached to every fantasy. This will be the solution. This will finally make my life good. But it's a fantasy. It's based on the hopeful emotions that make her think this is all going to be great. But it constantly fails because she doesn't have the necessary tools and skills to do it properly, because she hasn't got the right internal world and the proper emotional health. So take all of that. What are some of the issues? So here's a girl in survival mode without role models to give her tools to show her how to live a healthy, successful life. A girl that's basically had to resort to fantasy world and fantasy solutions. But a girl that's been neglected, rejected, not felt seen and loved, and so tons of shame, tons of a core identity belief that she's the problem, she's not good enough, she's a failure, she can't do anything right. But then, because she's been in survival mode in this chaos, she's never been able to make the transition properly out of her child limbic brain, her survival brain, into her prefrontal cortex, her wise, mature brain. And so she often still operates out of the limbic brain. And the limbic brain is basically, I will do this because it feels good. It seems like it's good. It hasn't considered the facts. It hasn't weighed out all of the costs and what it's going to take. It's just going on an impulsive feeling. And then I will only continue to do this as long as it's feeling good. As soon as I'm getting frustrated, as soon as it's getting boring, as soon as I have doubts about it, well, then I might as well quit. And I'm going to do this and push myself 110%. I won't have any balance, and then I'll burn myself out. And so that limbic brain dominance is a real problem. And then I think it's important to see that her default setting after living in chaos was chaos. That felt normal to her. That, to her nervous system, became its normal state that she knew how to live with and manage. And so part of her is drawn back to it, even though she hates it. Then living in chaos, living with all the shame and all of the things, there's tons of fear that begin to happen. So you've been criticized, you fail, and so there's fear of failure, there's fear of rejection, there's fear of not connecting, there's fear of being too broken. One fear after another is now taking over, so that fear is actually driving from a subconscious place much of her life and many of her decisions. And then, because of being in survival mode, her whole nervous system is out of whack. So usually your nervous system, you go into a sympathetic state to be productive, but then you go to a parasympathetic to rest. Both are necessary. Both are part of it. But when you're in danger all the time, you're constantly in a sympathetic state. You're not able to go to your parasympathetic. And so as a result of that, you burn out because you don't learn healthy self-care. So if you look at all of those things put together, what you begin to realize is this chaos, the neglect, all of the different things that happen because of that set M up to be in a life trap, to be in a prison, a loop, a cycle that is self-defeating. So I feel terrible. I feel I got to get a job. I got to be productive. I got to have a purpose in life. I got to make something out of my life. don't have any skills, don't know what I'm good at, don't know who I am. So let's jump into whatever appeals to me and maybe looks good. Fantasy takes that and blows it up. Then I don't know how to regulate my nervous system to have balance. So let's go, 110%, burn ourselves out, fail, then be confused, then get down on myself even more, then start to panic, and then I have to go through it again. So I hope that's a fair assessment. And what do you do moving forward? Bottom line to me is, if you can begin to accept the fact that there's a part of you that is still operating as a little girl, with the tools of a little girl, the perspectives of a little girl, and give that little girl permission, even at your age today, to begin learning new tools, to begin learning what healthy looks like. That might feel like, oh, that just proves that I'm a failure. No, it proves that you were traumatized and that you had parts of you that were never taught. You had to learn maladaptive tools, not healthy tools. If you don't give yourself permission to have space and time to do that, then you're going to continue this cycle for years and years. And then at 40, 50, 60, you're going to, maybe I better go back to this 5-year-old girl and love her and teach her tools. And what you're looking for is learning how to meet your needs in a healthy way, learning how to engage in relationships, to have a healthy life, to have a balanced nervous system, to heal the shame. All of those become key. So the danger for many people is they just want to do a couple quick little fixes that somehow will magically get rid of this cycle. Doesn't work. You need deep work to heal the shame, to understand how the trauma created all of these coping things that turned into a cycle that now causes you to create the very thing you're trying to avoid. So I would really encourage you to get into a thorough program like our LIFT program, where you're going to get all of the depth of information on all of these different areas, and then be taught healthy tools and what healthy looks like, and learn to develop connection with safe people so that you begin to have a surrogate family, a support network. Then I think you'll see so many things start to change in a good way for you. I hope that helps. To me, this is a question that so many people ask. It's such a common issue for people coming into complex trauma. If this was helpful, please like, subscribe, share it with others, make a comment. We really appreciate it. Until next time, have a great day.